If you haven't noticed already, there's a huge wave of people who are moving out of the West Coast, especially California, down to Texas. And I joined that wave. Yep, I'm proud to say it. I moved down to Texas and I absolutely love it. This is part three of a series of me just laying out my life and letting you guys know how I've gone from one crazy situation to the next. Hope you've enjoyed the series so far, and we're about to continue. Let's parlay. What's going on, y'all? Appreciate y'all tuning in to this part three of this crazy series where I am rehashing out my life over, the past couple years and just all of the twists and turns and the roller coasters. And it does not stop here. We continue to experience a lot of different twists and turns as I just go through every just milestone throughout this whole process. So in the last episode, I discussed how I was transitioning. I decided to move from Los Angeles to Austin, Texas, and I want to start there. I want to start with that move, what that looked like, how I settled into Austin, and how I maybe went to some of my old ways and had some of my old perspective from LA that I had to unlearn in Austin, and what Austin wound up doing for me and how I ended up in Houston. So I'm going to try to fit this into this 30-minute episode. We'll see how that goes. All right, so let's start off with the transition from LA to Austin. One thing that I didn't mention here was as I was moving out of LA, I had started getting, uh, I guess, not even a relationship, but I started pursuing a young lady out in Austin or out in LA, I should say, who I was very fond of. And I very much realize now that in the spirit of trying to be like super romantic and pursuing a woman, I really put myself out there more than I ever had before. So I was, letting her know exactly how I felt and wanting to, push past any sort of barriers to make things work. I was very committed to seeing it through. And she was a great young lady. Like, I very much enjoyed speaking to her, and we had great conversations, and we enjoyed spending time with one another. But there were a lot of things that were misaligned, and there were a lot of signs of that early on that I completely ignored because I was so obsessed with her beauty. I was so obsessed with how she made me feel, and less concerned with where would we actually be going together. And I think I was very, very much trying to convince her that where I had planned for us to go would be the best option, and she was very hesitant to actually commit to that. But nonetheless, I realize now that I really made that relationship or that situationship, whatever you want to call it, very much an idol in my life. And we all go through it. We all chase after something that continues to run away. And we had continued talking post move, right? So I moved from LA to Austin. I think it was like October time frame. Or was it October? Yeah, I think it was October. And no. It was like beginning of October. So end of September, beginning of October. And we continued to talk for a few weeks. We would FaceTime every day. I was staying up at all ungodly hours just to accommodate for her time zone and her going to sleep a little bit later and all that sort of stuff. I just put everything that was good for me aside and just completely dedicated myself to trying to make that work. Like, that became my life's mission. And for any fellas out there who are watching this, if you start to do that for a woman you're not married to, or even just in general, I don't think it's a great practice. But no person deserves that level of commitment without you guys being committed to each other, right? So, um, regardless, that was where I was at. That was where my head was, and eventually it got to a point where it was becoming very clear that things wouldn't work out. I had booked trips for her to come here, for me to go there, paid for it all. And 3 days before she was supposed to come out here, she let me know that she wasn't feeling comfortable with making that trip. And it was a blow to my heart for sure. Although I kind of saw it coming, it still put me in a position where I felt like, this didn't go as I expected. I put myself out there, And yeah, from that point forward, I think I started going back to what would make me feel better, right? So I tried going out in Austin and, drinking, trying to like chase after women here and meet new women just to get my mind off of her. And all of that just led me to continuing to lose myself, right? Because I wasn't really digging deep into why that made me feel a certain way. Like I was trying to make the most sense of it. I was very, um, I guess I was very self-aware of like what my part was in it, but there was still some resentment about the fact that it didn't go my way. And yeah, it just brought me to a pretty low point spiritually where I just started going back to the things that really separate me from God. And it was towards the end of 2025 where I decided like, all right, I had a real just like heart to heart with the Lord. Like I remember being in the shower and just like crying because I felt that emptiness that came along with seeking validation from all these external sources. And it was a really, really like vulnerable moment where and I've had these moments before. And if you've had them, you know what it feels like when you're just like, hey Lord, I'm here with you now. Like, please. Like I realize I'm not gonna be doing anything on my own strength from here on out. And that's when I decided, like, all right, I think I need, not I think, I'm going to commit to building my relationship with God in ways that I haven't before. So I committed I'd say that was the end of 2024 when I had that conversation. So in 2025, I committed to just reading the Bible before the end of the year. So I started a Bible plan that would allow me to do that. I committed to just getting around more Christ-like people and building a community that would be more aligned with where I wanted to go and with people who were probably more aligned with my principles and beliefs. And I also committed to just trying to do things differently. I didn't like withstain or abstain from dating or say that I wasn't going to date because I still had that desire to meet someone, but I just committed to doing it differently where I wouldn't lead with, affection and intimacy super early. Like I really wanted to take my time to get to know someone. I really wanted to go on walks and just approach things differently. So that was my mindset going into 2025. And the crazy part about it was right before the end of 2024, shortly after I had moved to Austin, I had met one of my friends who I had met in Los Angeles. We were both on reality TV, and it turned out we moved to Austin around the same time. So we had connected, and through that connection, it pretty much led me to a larger Christian community, and not a humongous one, but just a group of friends that I started to connect with as a result of me being aligned with him and meeting him while we moved. So I really feel like that was the Lord just allowing me to be placed in the right situation because honestly, if I didn't meet him and if I didn't meet the other people who I'd met through him, the rest of the year would have turned out very differently. And you're going to see why as I continue to talk through it. So, yeah, that was that. I also started 75 Hard at the beginning of 2025 with my brother. We've always had these opportunities to just challenge each other at the beginning of the year. So we decided to do this. Got into the best shape of my life that I've ever been into. Was the most confident in my body. I remember I was posting like just my journey, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, like you're getting lean, you're looking great and stuff." And also, I was reading the Bible. I was seeking the Lord more. I was seeking to understand. It did become a little bit of like a checkbox mentality, but the good thing is like when you have a Bible study plan, there's videos that come and support whatever you're reading to give you context and a better interpretation of something that may not seem like it makes sense. So all of that started to happen at the beginning of 2025. And as I said, I wanted to go about dating differently, and I did. However, I think I was still looking and searching in places where it wasn't going to align with uh, the trajectory of my personal spiritual journey, but also just personal self development. So I remember I would be like very adamant about like just going on walks and coffee dates, and not like jumping to things that require a lot more of like an investment, like just things where I can actually just talk to the person and get to know them and not try to impress them in any sort of way. And I felt good about that approach. And what I often found that was happening during that season was I was also very like, I just didn't want to, I didn't commit to like abstaining at that point. I wasn't at that level yet in my commitment. But what I did was say, like, I just don't want to lead with that. And I don't want that to be like my main desire. I don't want to like get too physically involved super early with the women that I was dating. And what often happened is I'm in this mode where like I'm very much like, all right, I don't want to engage in that super early. And I started meeting women who wanted the exact opposite, where like that validation came from that for them. And that used to be me. So I'm not judging, and I didn't judge them at the time, but I was just like so surprised because I was like, oh man, God, like I'm finally trying to be wholesome, and I'm meeting people who don't, who are confused by that, and it almost seemed like me being wholesome like made them desire it more, because I'm not like trying to touch all that often. They're getting confused. They're like, does this guy like me or not because of what their expectations are? And I just kept running into the same hurdles. And then I would fall into the temptation of like trying to validate the fact that I am interested in them by committing to something sexually. And then, now I'm back in the same cycle of just not being aligned with the Lord. And it was hard because at that time, I didn't really have any examples in my life of men who I knew were abstaining. But as a part of that community that I started to find, I started meeting men who actually live by that. And in particular, one of my closer friends really was firm and like, hey, bro, like you really don't need to be doing that. And I'm super thankful for those conversations because if it wasn't for that, then I would have probably just continued that cycle thinking that it was normal. So after those conversations, I started cutting those things off and, just realized that, hey, I don't think it's something that I want to engage in, but still not making the commitment yet. So that was also a part of 2025. Also struggled finding a lot of consistency within my business in Austin. I really didn't do too much socially. Like I was very much locked in. I would go to different Bible studies or men's groups. I was just really seeking after the Lord for the first time in my life and doing it consistently. But at the same time, I was also really working on my business more than I ever had before. Like a lot of my time as a business owner has been taken away from being on reality TV shows, traveling to go to reality TV events, focusing on becoming an influencer and trying to get brand deals. It was just all over the place. So this is the first year that I'm really locked in. And I saw some results from my business from me grinding away, but the results just they weren't matching my effort and the time that I was putting into it. And it was just really hard to navigate through that. And thankfully, through the community that I met in Austin, there were a bunch of other online fitness coaches who were able to help kind of give me some perspective, have some recommendations for who I should hire, et cetera, et cetera. So I was very hyper focused on just figuring out this business throughout 2025. And in the middle of the year, one, I turned 30 last year. So I had a nice little small celebration, and I really didn't care too much about having like a big deal made out of it just because I felt like I was living my life so selfishly all throughout my 20s. I didn't want my 30th celebration party to be just like a huge thing, drawing too much attention to me. But anyway, that was my own issue. But in the middle of the year, I was growing in my faith. I started speaking a lot more about my faith on social media. And one of my friends had recommended, he was like, yo, have you ever thought about working with Christians and making that a little bit more of a focal point in your program? And at first, obviously there's a bit of imposter syndrome because I'm like, man, I'm just starting my faith walk, but Whenever I start something as a service, a lot of the times it's to help me become more accountable to the things that I want to improve upon and stay committed to. So even with fitness, I wanted to make sure I was staying fit. I wanted to make sure I was staying on top of my health, and I wanted to be an example of that. So, in starting a program where I'm incorporating faith, I'm like, oh, this is perfect because now this will challenge me to grow in my faith and become a lot more rooted in the word and want to study more and just lead people in the right direction. So, I decided to launch my Fit and Faith program last year. So, this is the first time that I'm incorporating my faith not only into the program, but into my social media, into the messaging, and who I was looking to work with. And as a result of that, I got the most leads I had ever gotten from a program launch, ever. And it was very clear that not a lot of people had run into a coach who would incorporate faith into a fitness program, let alone just be a God fearing man who is a fitness coach, right? Who talks about his faith. So there was a lot of interest that had come in. I was overwhelmed by the amount of people who were interested in the program. And I remember I had hired a contractor to help me with like managing DMs and all that sort of stuff. It didn't work out with the first gentleman, but then I wound up hiring some folks from the Philippines to help out with the volume. Then I hired another one of my friends who I'd met in Austin to help out with like the calls that I was taking for people who were interested. Then I hired another guy who was going to be my closer, my sales guy. I hired like 5 people in the span of a month to try to handle this volume because I felt like this was my moment to scale my business, to go from being a solo business owner to finally being like a true entrepreneur, a true CEO who's managing a team and getting to that point where I can delegate some of these responsibilities. So that was a lot in the span of a month while also investing in Facebook ads and meta ads to try to grow the reach and sustain the level of interest. Because I was like, man, I got something that seems to be working. Let me go all in on it. And all of that just resulted in me overcommitting myself. And I think I realized that in the month of August. I think it was the end of August where I realized like one, money's getting tight because there's holes in this process that I don't have enough time to fix because I'm trying to onboard these people who I just hired. And I'm also concerned about making enough to pay the people who I hired and making enough that I can actually sustain myself and what I am responsible for. And it was just a lot. It was just a lot. So I had then decided, okay, I need to pause and just reevaluate things because I don't have any other option but to pause. And that's what I decided to do. And this was where the devil really had his way with me in my mind. Because at this moment, I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I I decided to incorporate my faith into my coaching business. I'm thinking that I'm doing something to advance God's kingdom. This is bound to be blessed. And also, this is the first time that I've actually taken my business super seriously. And I'm putting all my eggs into this basket. And what happened is I started to just feel like a failure after that period. I felt like, man, like how dumb was I to, go about it that way? Which was, I mean, that was kind of a valid thought because it was just a lot of impulsive decisions at the moment. Um, but as a business owner, you learn from your mistakes. You learn from trying things. You learn from doing things that are kind of wild in order to avoid those things in the future, and learn how to be a lot more calculated with your decision making, your thought process, and all of those things. So that was a thought that really festered in my mind. It was feeling like a failure. And then another thought that came about was just this anger that I had towards God. I don't know if you've ever felt angry towards God. Most people probably feel this um, anger or sadness after someone passes, like, why them? Why did you take them away from me? And whenever you have an anger towards the Lord, it's always because you're thinking about you. Like it's all having to do with you and the world revolving around you. And that's exactly where my mind went was, why me? Why wouldn't you bless me as a result of pursuing you more this year than I ever have, but also providing a service that allows people to grow in their faith, but also get fit at the same time. Like I just was like, why wouldn't God do this? Like, and then I also got angry at God for like, allowing me to make the decisions that I made. I was like, God, why didn't you show me? Like, I just was angry. I was just upset. Um, just really didn't feel like I understood why He didn't bless this, and that allowed me to stoop into really deep isolation, which is always, always terrible. And this is how most guys deal with their issues is we have a lot of shame. We have a lot of pride and ego. So we don't want to show people, we don't want to talk to people about our weaknesses or about our shortcomings. Um, and we think that nobody cares. And if nobody can fix it, then why talk about it, right? So that's essentially where my mind went. And it just brought me to a really, really dark place where I started to just go to numbing myself with all the things that I normally would back when I was in Los Angeles, back before I was seeking the Lord. So that, it could have been womanizing, it could have been, THC and just trying to numb myself from the feeling. And that led me to not taking care of my body as much. I started gaining weight and just not feeling confident in myself. I didn't even want to go work out with my friends because I was embarrassed by how I looked because I was in such great shape before this. Just all of this stuff started piling up in my mind, and it just all led me to a really, really tough spot. And thankfully, and I'm still so thankful for the friends who I had there who saw that, and even when I wasn't as responsive as I could have been, they still came looking and was like, hey, let's get you out of the house. Like they knew something was off. And, I obviously shared more as I talked with them and as we, discussed what was going on. But like, I didn't want to, I didn't want to bring it up because I was like, who's going to fix this but me? And that's a common challenge that guys face is the enemy convincing you that nobody can help you, that you shouldn't talk to anybody. But I'm thankful for the friends that I had who reached out regardless, and just saw that this was an opportunity to bring me out of a tough spot. And yeah, I mean, I was in a very rough financial situation and just was trying to assess things. And I wound up going home to, go to a wedding, see family and all that sort of stuff. And then I think it was before Thanksgiving, I really started to assess where I was, and I started looking at what were the main things that were keeping me um, in a dangerous spot or in a not so healthy spot. One was the isolation. Two, my expenses. Living by myself in a really nice luxury apartment complex wasn't helping, you know. And then three was just like the accountability, the accountability and the ability to have conversations that I would have with myself that I needed to have with other people. So I started assessing these things, and my brother and I had decided to do a road trip to the East Coast and see family and stuff. And I can't remember if it was before or after. I think it was before, but I had asked him if he would be open to the idea of us moving in together. And he was he was completely down for it because this was something that he had had in mind for a while, even before I moved to Austin. He had originally wanted me to move to Houston. And I finally saw what he saw, not even to the fullest extent, but I saw a path to one, getting myself together and putting myself in a situation where I just wasn't going to succumb to the same things that I would normally go to when things got rocky or when things didn't go as expected. So yeah, that decision made me feel like I could remove this whole isolation problem. Um, I could start saving on my living expenses, grow in my brotherhood, um, with my brother, and also just sow into him as much as he sows into me, because whenever we decided to do something together, it always worked out a lot better than if we were to try to like hold ourselves accountable to something. And I'm blessed to have a brother who I could do that with, because there's a lot of people who don't. So I realized this, and after the road trip, we came back and we started game planning, and it was pretty clear at that point, yeah, yeah, it's time to make a move to Houston. It wasn't even as if there was anything wrong with Austin, because Austin clearly brought me a lot closer to the Lord, and allowed me to reach a point in my life that I needed to reach by going through those experiences. So yeah, it was a lot of things going in the right direction, and at the end of 2025, not only did I make that decision to move to Houston, but I also made the decision that, yeah, I think I'm not. I think I'm done. I'm done with THC. I'm done with liquor. I'm done with having sex before marriage. All of these things seem to be my downfalls whenever things get rocky in my business or just in life in general. So if I say I'm going to do something, I always do it. And I think the reason why I never committed to doing it before was because I never said I wasn't. So I just was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done doing this. And it provided me so much more freedom, and it just provided me a lot more clarity going into 2026 and making this move to Houston, because I knew if I were to go to a city like Houston, it's best to not have those things as options because of how many options for those things are already in Houston. So yeah, that was the time in Austin. I was so thankful, and I'm still thankful for the people that I met there, and all the support and love that I'm not too far away. I've already visited Austin while being here in Houston. But that was essentially my time in Austin and what had led me to moving to Houston. In the next episode, I think it's an appropriate time to check in on how Houston has been going and what's new, what my experience has been, the good, the bad, the ugly, and share with you what God has revealed to me thus far with my time here. So that is all I got for this episode. I hope that you all have enjoyed me sharing my story. Please subscribe if you haven't already to stay tuned for episodes as they come out on a weekly basis. But other than that, y'all, yeah, it's been really cool to just walk through this with you. And if you have any other questions or other things that you want me to talk about, feel free to drop it in the comments, okay? But other than that, God bless, and yeah, just have a great week. Take care.